Thank you all. Great to be here with you this morning. I've been coming to Creative Mornings since probably last fall, and I remember when I first came, I just was hooked. I knew I needed to keep coming back, and when I talked to Colin, I was like, yo, I would really love to speak at Creative Mornings sometime, and he was like, well, okay, I'll let you know, and so it was about a month ago. He said, hey, do you want to speak on Beyond? And I was like, well, I'm not sure, because I don't really know what Beyond means to me yet. So I took some time to reflect, and I was having a conversation, and it just hit me really clearly what Beyond meant. And I text Colin, it was like 12:30 or 1 a.m. I was like, yo, dude, I want to speak. He's probably like, what the hell is this guy's deal? But I'm really excited to share what Beyond means to me. And I want to start by sharing something that I wrote, probably within the last couple of weeks as I reflected on the theme, because I think it'll frame up kind of how I'm thinking about Beyond. So here we go. Beyond. What does Beyond mean to me? It seems simple, but is it really? A simple word, but is it actually that easy? Or is it a confounding complexity, a mystery, a memory, your history from a distance that impacts your present reality? Beyond. Beyond infinity, like Toy Story, beyond infinity, it's his story, her story, your story, our story. Of struggle, of loss, of barely surviving, of adventure, transcendence, your heart reviving. See, Beyond means more to me than that line out of Toy Story, because Beyond's your story. It's my story, it's our story. Beyond is the world that exists between what is and what could be, what was and what will be, what isn't and what should be, what's now and what's beyond that which you can see. It's a world of possibility inviting you to enter. Could it be that beyond the cultural ideal of success, beyond this persisting urge to impress something or someone, there exists a land of unadulterated freedom? Beyond safety, beyond security, beyond the life that you imagined, beyond certainty, beyond clarity, beyond the way that you thought things would happen. Beyond demand, requirements, pressures, and perfection, beyond the very real yet very unrealistic expectation to attain what's unattainable, to sustain what's unsustainable, to maintain what's not maintainable instead of embracing what's truly and most authentically you. See, to me, Beyond, it's euphoria, it's fulfillment, it's bliss, but Beyond is a world that so many of us miss. But why? Is it the fear of failing, of flailing, of disappointing, of trying that makes us live a life where really we're dying inside to be free and to be seen and to live a life we love that's often felt like nothing more than a dream? Let Beyond invite you, inspire you, compel you, and move you to experience the world beyond that's yours and waiting for you. Thank you. Y'all didn't know I like to write. Now, did you? You didn't know. So when I think about this theme, Beyond to me is about story. It's about the story of the moments, the experiences, the defining times that inform who we are and inform who we become. So I'm going to share a couple chapters out of my own story, and then some others that I've been able to draw some inspiration from. So my story of Beyond starts with my family. My parents are from Ghana, West Africa. They moved to America in the mid-'80s in pursuit of a better life and more opportunity. My mom, she's an angel. My dad, he's an academic. I grew up in this family where academics was an expectation. My dad, he has his PhD. He's associate dean of grad school. That just was our deal, right? Like, we kind of grew up with academics being superimposed. So here's me trying to follow in my dad's footsteps. I know, I'm adorable. I personally found my passion for sports, right? Like, I was kind of into academics, but my thing was sports. And so I remember as a kid, I used to play with Legos. And so I'd like take my Legos and turn them into these like little sports action figures and like play out these imaginary games with my Legos. I told you I was adorable. So playing, that was my jam. I remember in elementary school, I started to play soccer. Really, I was probably only there for the Capri Sun and orange slices and fruit snacks. I still love fruit snacks. And then in elementary school, I also started playing basketball. Now I was terrible at basketball. I tried really hard, but I don't think I scored a point the whole season. It was kind of fun, but I don't know if you can call that playing. And then I started to play football going into middle school. Now, if any of you, I'm from Texas. If you know anything about Texas, you know they're crazy about their football in Texas. And so I started to play football in Texas, and I was, again, not very good my 7th grade year. I remember, I'll never forget, after my 7th grade year, I was on the B team, and my coach pulled me into his office, and he was like, "Oppong," he's like, "you're a lover and not a fighter and a big teddy bear." I was like, "Damn, coach." And then one of my other coaches told me I looked like a roly-poly. It wasn't very nice either. They're pretty hard on the ego in middle school. So I recovered and bounced back from that, and going into high school, things were getting better. As a freshman, I ran on the varsity track team. As a sophomore, I played varsity football, and then I got moved up, and things were progressing. Junior year, I was good in all 3 sports, and going into my senior year, I had this opportunity to potentially play at the next level if everything worked out. So going into my senior year, things were going well. I was playing really well. Our team was undefeated, and midway through the season, I suffered a devastating knee injury that effectively ended my high school playing career. Now, as I mentioned, my dad was an academic, and I found my passion in sports, and so I had kind of built my identity off of this, so when it came to an end, it was pretty devastating for me. I sobbed that night, sobbed and sobbed, because I was like, okay, like, what am I gonna do? And so I had this whole recalibration, and I was like, okay, like, if I recover, I'll get a scholarship and maybe get re-recruited, and so that's what happened. So I recovered, and I ended up going to Abilene Christian University. Got a partial scholarship to go play football there, and so I get to Abilene Christian, and I'm one of a few freshmen that's getting to play and travel and really enjoying my experience there. As irony would have it, I ended up suffering the same knee injury to the same knee, and ironically enough, on the same day, exactly a year apart. I don't know how y'all feel about October 8th, but it's not my favorite day. So if you want to send me cupcakes or cookies or flowers, that'd be chill. I remember feeling so disappointed and disillusioned. Like, it's one of those things that I built my identity off of that, and then it was gone. I don't know if you've had that experience where you have this expectation of what something's going to be, and then the reality of what it is so different. You're like, maybe it's this, or maybe it's this. Like, have you had that expectation, and it just doesn't turn out that way, right? Expectation versus reality. Your computer's too slow for my gifts to work. So I remember coming to that place and just realizing, like, the way that I had imagined my life going wasn't how it was going. So the first theme of my story would be disappointment, which leads me to chapter 2. So I ended up continuing to play football, but mentally and emotionally wasn't into it the same way. You know, after you suffer an injury twice and 2 times in 12 months, it kind of changes the way that you think about what you're doing. And so for me, I kept playing but wasn't into it. And I ended up my freshman year, I got connected with this community of folks. Now, this was a really awesome community. It was with the local church, and what I really loved about it was it really connected with the place in me that wanted to make an impact, that believed in doing something meaningful, that wanted to create value both in the community and, like, what does it look like to impact the world? And so as any, like, zealous and ambitious person, I immersed myself in this organization and spent the time from I was 18 till I was 24 working in this organization. I did everything. I mentored college students, I did music stuff, I wrote curriculum, I did leadership development, I did all of it. And much like my college football playing career, it ended very differently than I'd imagined. I'll never forget the March day. I walked into the office a little late to a meeting to find out that I would not be working at the organization anymore. I lost my job. So for any of you who have been laid off, you probably understand it's a pretty disappointing or disillusioning experience, yeah? But for me, it was probably compounded by the fact that I had just bought a house, I was in a relationship at the time, I was just trying to do it all at once, you know, like, why not? And I came to this place, like, of intense, again, this is what I had imagined, and this isn't what I was experiencing. So chapter 2 ended in disillusionment for me, which leads me to chapter 3. Isn't it amazing that sometimes out of the most disillusioning experiences of our life, it makes us ask questions about who we are and what we want and what matters to us? That was most certainly the case for me. I started to ask myself these questions like, what do I value? What's important to me? And that kind of led me on my own kind of quest and pursuit. So I did a quick stint in consulting, I did a quick stint in sales, and I ended up moving up to Washington State to get a master's at Gonzaga University in organizational leadership. And yes, for all you Southern folks, it's pronounced Gonzaga, not Gonzaga. Good? Yeah, okay. So Gonzaga was a magical experience for me. I really loved my experience there. And because I loved it so much, I'd be remiss if I did not share some of my favorite parts of the experience. If you watched March Madness at all, you would know we had a really good run this year. Went to the Final Four for the first time in 18 years, made it to the national championship. No, we did not win, and no, I still don't want to talk about it. Here's us going to the Final Four. Here's me. I just wanted you to know that I got better at playing basketball. So much better at basketball. I just loved it. Gonzaga was a magical experience for me because it gave me the opportunity to connect with myself in a new way. I started doing organizational leadership, and I was really researching and learning, and I started to connect with different parts of my story that I hadn't connected with before. I remember a turning point being a class I took called Transformational Leadership, and in this class, our professor had us reflect on our own journey of transformation. Like, what does transformation mean to you? How do you see transformation? What has your story been with that? And I started to connect with the first chapter being about disappointment, the second chapter being about disillusionment. Like, beyond those two things, what exists for me? I started to connect with my story in new ways. And so chapter 3 was about discovery. It was about discovery of self, discovery of passion, discovery of what mattered to me. And so going into my second year at Gonzaga, I had the opportunity to create this internship program. I remember feeling so envisioned and inspired by this idea. We got a new director at the time, and she asked me, she said, yo, is there anything that you want to work on? And I remember, I want to do this internship program. And it was one of the first times that I'd gotten to take something and create out of, there was nothing that existed. It was a totally blank canvas. And so I got to create something out of nothing. And I remember feeling so envisioned, I would go to bed thinking about it. I would wake up thinking about it. It was Michelangelo who said, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set it free. I remember having a very similar experience. I saw this thing so clearly and I didn't know exactly what it would become, but I had to bring it to life. You know that experience, right? As a creative where you see something or you think something or you're imagining something and you have to bring it to life. It was a very similar experience for me. And so I created this internship program. It went well. We got off the ground, had about 15 students participate in it. Really exciting experience. I finished my master's program and I was like, okay, well, what's next for me? Didn't really know what I was going to do, but I knew I loved the process of creating, of bringing ideas to life. And that led me to Nashville. So as a 27-year-old with a master's degree, I made the brilliant decision of moving to Nashville and taking an internship with Jumpstart Foundry for the hefty salary of $10 an hour. I don't know if it's the best thing I ever did, the worst thing I ever did, I don't know. We made it though. Jumpstart Foundry, if you're not familiar with Jumpstart, Jumpstart is a healthcare innovation fund, which means we invest in healthcare innovation startups. What I love most about working with Jumpstart is I work with some of the most brilliant and creative people that are really driven and motivated to make something better in the world. I think it's really been part of my own evolution and through entrepreneurship, you really can create meaningful stuff in the world. And so as a part of that, I had the opportunity to found this company, Ohana Health. So Ohana Health, I took the very same concept that I had at Gonzaga and turned that into a company, and we launched last spring. So Ohana Health is an internship experience company. We source interns from all over the country and place them in healthcare innovation startups. We launched in the spring, like I said, and we had 177 students apply from 64 different universities around the country. We identified 10 students and placed them in 7 healthcare startups. So it was a really cool experience, again, getting to see this thing come to life. In addition to the work I do with Jumpstart, I get to collaborate with these fine gentlemen. Y'all know Colin. The guy in the middle is my buddy Kanishka. We are working on a community of sorts that focuses on the shared experience of entrepreneurship, the shared interest of being a creator. We launched last fall with another buddy of mine, Thomas, and we're in the process of rebranding and reimagining this community. So when I thought about my own story, connecting it to the theme of beyond, I was like, okay, there has to be some correlation between going beyond and creating something, right? There has to be some connection between okay, so for me, if chapter 1 was about disappointment and if chapter 2 was about disillusionment, which led me to this place of discovery, I'm like, okay, there has to be some kind of correlation between the two. And what is it? So then I started to think about people who I feel like impacted the way we see life, who maybe have written history in a sense, who have impacted the way that we see and experience life. I'm like, I guarantee you they had to go beyond something. There's some connection about going beyond and creating beauty in the world. It was Winston Churchill who said, "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it." I started to think about people who wrote history. What did they have to go beyond? I imagine if DJ Khaled was around at the time, he would have been in the background saying major key. "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it." So I thought of a few examples. Christopher Columbus. Part of the reason he stood out to me is because I didn't really pay much attention to history. I don't know about you, it wasn't really my jam, but I think he was important, like discovered a new world or something like that. I think we're all in this process of being adventurers, right? Like we're adventuring in our own journey, our own story. So for me, he epitomizes that. They literally thought his ass was gonna fall off the earth. But he went anyway, and in that, discovered a new world, right? Rosa Parks went beyond the existing injustices of her time to stand for something that she believed in. She believed in a better, more unified world. And with that act of courage, in that she went beyond. Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister is the first person to run under a 4-minute mile. At the time, doctors thought that you might actually die. Your body would shut down if you ran under a 4-minute mile. I don't know about you, but that would most certainly be the case for me, like a cardiac arrest situation for sure. But he did it, and he created a tipping point. And now the world record is somewhere around 3 minutes and 43 seconds, beyond the realm of what was thought to be possible to create a new normal. The Wright brothers, credited with creating the first aircraft. People thought they were delusional. Like, you're going to create a machine that can actually fly? No chance. But they did. And I'm certainly glad they did, because that means I don't have to walk or ride a train to Portland this afternoon. And no, I will not be flying United. May their souls rest in peace. J.K. Rowling wrote a book that some of you may have heard of, Harry Potter or something. Did you know her original manuscript was rejected 12 times before it was ever published? And now she's gone on to sell over 400 million copies in maybe 68 different languages. Beyond rejection to create something meaningful and beautiful in the world. Barack Obama, my man. Again, another example of going beyond a social construct, a social norm, to be the first of his kind to lead our country. So you look at some of these stories and you're like, okay, maybe it's relatable, maybe it's not. I started to think about people in my own life who I feel like have gone beyond, because there's like a personal element of that to me. So this is my lovely sister, Esther. Last year, Esther launched a business, Queen Esther's Cupcakes. If you know me at all, you know I'm a sweets connoisseur, and she makes like the best cupcakes, actually. I asked Esther, I said, Esther, what did it mean for you to go beyond? She said, I had to go beyond my fear of failure. I had to go beyond my perceived ineptitude. I had to go beyond this belief that there's a perfect time and place to jump out there and do what I believe in. And she did. She launched this company, and last month she celebrated her 1-year anniversary as a business owner. This is my friend Cassie. Cassie worked at a company you probably have heard of, Google in San Francisco. So she was doing that for a while. She was there 4 years, and she came to this point. She's like, man, something's missing for me. I love what I'm getting to do, but there's something missing. She wanted to live a life she loved, so she decided she was done working at Google, and she moved to Hawaii a couple of months ago because she wanted to live a life that she loved. I asked Cassie, I said, Cassie, what did it mean for you to go beyond? She said, I had to go beyond the societal pressure and the societal perception of success. I had to go beyond my friends and family's need for me to have an exact plan and for me to be going a specific trajectory. I had to embrace what mattered to me. I had to go beyond this notion that there's one way to live and one way to exist. And she did. And now she's tapping into this place where she really loves. Marcus Whitney, a bit of a local celebrity. I'm sure you've seen him around. Marcus is the co-founder of Jumpstart. He's the CEO of Health Further. Marcus taught himself to be a software engineer. Some people do like chess or crochet. He's like, software engineering, no big deal. Marcus was also a college dropout. He was a college dropout and has now gone on to be an influencer in 2 industries where he's very clearly the minority in more ways than one. I would imagine for Marcus, going beyond means going beyond who you have to be or what you have to be successful. So why do I share these stories? When I think about this theme beyond, why do I share these stories? We're all here this morning at Creative Mornings. I feel like there's a part of these stories that's compelling to all of us, right? Like we see these people that have written history and we're like, I can do that, I can be that, or I want to be that, or maybe I don't know if I can. But I think there's something about those stories that calls all of us, that inspires us, that motivates us to say like, okay, well, what does it mean for me to go beyond? So that's my question for you. What keeps us from that place of beyond? I think we could go down the list. There's probably a lot of things, right? It could be fear of failure. It could be rejection. I think there's a whole assortment of things. But could it be as simple as this? I want to propose that when your fear of what you don't want gets bigger than the belief in what you do want, it's in that moment that you decide not to go beyond. When the fear of what you don't want gets bigger than the belief in what you do want, it's in that moment that you decide not to go beyond. I started thinking, I'm like, I wonder how many companies, relationships, friendships, businesses, ideas, inventions have been left on the other side of going beyond. So on the flip side, when you believe in what you want more than you're afraid of what you don't want, I think it's in that moment that you go beyond and you tap into that part of your heart that longs to create something beautiful in the world. So what's your beyond? What does it mean to you to go beyond? What is your beyond? Maybe you don't know, or maybe you're in the process of designing it or defining it. What does beyond mean to you? I find myself asking this question a lot because it's not a one-time thing. It's not like you choose to go beyond your pain or that moment of tension or the questions. It's not like you just do that once and then it's over. Like, I think it's an ongoing thing that you have to choose. So when I come to this place, I ask myself these 3 questions. Who do you want to be? Not who do you feel like you have to be, not who do your parents or your friends or society, not who do they tell you to be. Who do you want to be, and what does it look like for you to live as your most authentic self? How do you want to feel about your life, about your relationships, about your work? How do you want to feel? Right? And what do you want to create in the world? Who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? And what do you want to create in the world? And I promise, if you're honest with yourself about those 3 questions, it will require you to go beyond something. Who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? And what do you want to create in the world? I want to propose that is your beyond. Look, going beyond isn't a guarantee that you're going to make it or that what you're going to do is going to work or that you're going to be immediately happier or successful. It's not. And anyone who tells you that is lying. It's just not true because there's a real tension we come to that, like, on the other side, yeah, you could create something, but it might not work. But it might. And because it might, it's more than worth the risk because at least you'll become a more present and engaged version of yourself. And at best, you'll begin living a life you love and creating something beautiful in the world. I want to leave you with this quote by Theodore Roosevelt. He said, "It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face has been marred by the dust and the sweat and the blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself on a worthy cause, who at best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly." Thank you very much.
We got time for questions, too. We can hang out a little bit. It usually takes people a minute to just digest.
Tell us about this trip you're about to go on.
Okay, so I'm going to Portland, and I'm going to back to Gonzaga, where I went to school, and then I'm going to Denver just for fun. Just wanted to take a week to just do it, so taking a week to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm interested in learning more about your company and how just the logistics of how your company works and what your learnings have been from that experience.
Are you talking about Jumpstart or Ohana?
About Ohana.
Yeah, so many learnings. I remember whenever I started working on it, Marcus was like, can you put together a P&L? I was like, what the hell is a P&L? I don't know what that means. But I think a lot of the learnings would be, so part of the problem we feel like we're solving is there's an emerging population of students who are interested in health, like health and wellness, but they don't want to be doctors or nurses. And so there's an emerging population, they want to focus on innovation, and so we're connecting with these students and creating like a program type experience for them. And so I think some of the main learnings have been like there really is a huge need or opportunity there. I think what we saw on the startup side, I mean, sourcing talent, it's a huge haul, right? Like we had 177 students apply, that's a lot of application review, and we narrowed it down to like 60 in interviews and blah, blah, blah. And so for the companies, I think for them, the value prop is that they get access to talent without the time-intensive search process. And then we're able to create like a community type experience for those students as well. And so I think we've identified both the problem and the need on both sides. I think some of the interesting challenges is going to be like, how do we grow it? How do we scale it? What are the different opportunities to do that? Is there something that can exist where we do it like all over the country, right? So I think there are a few different things that we're looking at there. I have amazing students that I've worked with. One of the girls, Sabrina, she's coming on full time. So it's been really cool to just see it come together. Probably a lot longer conversation, but I'm happy to share more at some time. So, yeah.
Where do you find your daily inspiration and motivation to carry you through from the inception to a dream to its finalization?
That's such a good question, and I wish I could say I know the exact answer. I'll talk about, for me personally.
Maybe repeat the question a little bit too.
He should probably repeat the question. There's a lot of words.
Where do you find the energy to go from inspiration to realization?
Yeah, I'll say sometimes I have it and sometimes I don't, if I'm honest. And I think for me personally, like I'm a pretty reflective person. I think a lot about just like what matters to me. And so I think there's a part of it that like I capture, like I feel envisioned, right? Like I feel envisioned by this thing that I want to do or that I want to create. And I really set my heart and set my sights on that. And then I'm just honest with myself throughout the process. Like, is this energizing? Is this working? Is this like giving me life? And I just I think there's a huge self-awareness, huge honesty piece that I really have to engage. Because I think to say that you're always going to be inspired, it's just not real life, right? And I think to be able to be honest and say like, I can accept myself when I'm not inspired, like that's equally as valuable. And so I think I kind of go through that process and just really try to be honest with where I am, who I am, and like feel acceptance for myself in that place. And know that like what I do believe in and want to create, yeah, it's going to take work, it's going to take energy, and I have to be able to be honest with myself in order to do that. So, yeah.
Where do you work out?
Well, I just got a membership at Gym 5, and I go to the downtown Y. You know, you can join me anytime.
Your biceps the size of my waist, but I was
Been working on it.
what's your favorite TED Talk? What do we need to watch when we get home today?
I'll be honest. I'm not a huge currently. I had a really intense like podcasting TED Talk phase, and I just stopped because like I really appreciate like original thought, and so I wanted to like read or see something, even just a clip, and like let it inspire my own thoughts. So I don't really have a lot that I'm watching or reading right now. I could probably go in the archives and dig something out for you, but I don't have anything that's like current. So.
I can promote one. There's a TED Talk that's been inspiring me a lot lately. It was a guy who spoke at our CreativeMornings conference as well. His name is Casey Gerald, and he has a talk called The Gospel of Doubt.
Oh yeah, someone actually recommended that one to me the other day.
Yeah, man, and I've recommended it to you before, but you haven't watched it.
Nope, I haven't. Still haven't, that's correct.
17 minutes, y'all. Change your life.
What was it called again?
The Gospel of Doubt by Casey Gerald.
Yes, ma'am.
So since you came to Nashville when you were 27, you said?
Uh-huh.
What do you think about how Nashville's changing, like for creative stuff, for cultural accessibility, for work? What do you think about changing Nashville?
Yeah, so Nashville's, I mean, it's an interesting place to me because coming from the West Coast, like, just a lot more diversity of thought maybe existed or exists. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. And so coming to Nashville, I mean, I think it took a little time to figure out like, where are my people, or like, what does it feel like to get connected? And finding Creative Mornings was part of that. And so I think the way that Nashville's changing, I mean, I think that there's a lot of stuff like this that seems to be popping up. Like, people are looking for some kind of like community type aspect, like that synergy that really helps move them forward. I think what we've seen from the Jumpstart side, I mean, obviously with healthcare being the largest industry here, we've been able to connect with companies across the country that are looking for support as far as connecting with like the larger provider systems. And so, I don't know, I mean, I think Nashville, when I think about the possibilities and the landscape, I feel like there's a lot of creative energy here. I think there's a lot of like willingness to collaborate. And I think that's probably our sweet spot and our magic. If we can like hold on to our creativity and we can tap into that place like where we can be collaborative and create together, I think that's where our magic lies. So, yes, sir.
Daniel, what would you say is your chapter 4 after discovery, or are you on chapter 4?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm smack in the middle of it. I think the themes that feel most relevant to me, I think it's like a real self-acceptance and like being honest with who and what I am and okay with that, whatever that means, right? And I think that's been, I mean, I grew up in, like I said, academics was part of my upbringing and all these other things. And so I think for me, it's been a matter of like asking myself, like, what feels real and authentic to me? And like, how can I consistently live from that place? No matter what it takes me away from or puts me into, like, what does it look like for me to consistently connect with that? And so it's been interesting because I felt the most creative energy I've ever felt in my life just by being honest about who and what I am. And I think from that place of acceptance, like, it's a mix of it jives with some things and it just doesn't with others. And people still want you to be something and then they're okay with you being it, but not really. And that, you know what I mean? So I think it's just awareness of all the expectations that exist around me and then anchoring to what feels real and authentic to me. Yeah.
Well, I think this is as good a place as any to leave it. Thanks,
Awesome.
man.
Thank y'all.